guys, and welcome to another video. Now this one has been requested a lot over the last couple of weeks. We are going to be doing a tier maker for the Sunderland players that I would like to keep, sell, loan, get rid of totally, keep at all costs, all that kind of stuff, which we'll get into in a moment. Now before we do get into it, if you hit the like button for me, it would be massively, massively appreciated. This actually took me a bit longer than I would have liked to put this tier together because there wasn't an up-to-date one on Tier Maker. So I've tried my best to make it as up-to-date as possible. I may be missing a player or two. I'm not too sure. If I have done, please let me know. I'm sure I will have done, knowing me. But if you have done, let us know in the comments and I'll let you know my thoughts on said player that I have missed out. But this is how the tiers do go. We have get rid in capital letters. Bit more aggressive, essentially, if I just don't want them to see them in a Sunderland shirt ever again. Bit more assertive, bit more aggressive. Get out, essentially. Sell someone who I just don't think they're going to cut it. A bit less aggressive than the previous tier, but I just don't think they're going to make it as a Sunderland player going forward. Now, loan is someone who I'd like to see go out for a loan spell. Again, speaks for itself. There are a couple of players here who are on loan with us, and if I don't want to see them come back, they will also go into sell, which I know isn't technically correct because they're not our player anyway, but you know what I mean. Then the next one is keep, so someone who I'd like to see keep around, not absolutely as desperate as the top tier, which is keep at all costs. So even the players who are unlikely to stay, it's just one of them that I would, of course, love to see keep at all costs. I'm sure you know exactly what kind of player we're going to be talking about in that one. But we will start off, just bear in mind, this is just my opinion, guys, and I am just rambling here. None of this is scripted. I haven't even really thought about it. I'd like to see you guys, I'd like you guys to see me just kind of just roll off the tongue, and we'll see where it goes. This could end up being surprising for me as well, because I haven't really put too much thought into it until now. But we'll start from the beginning. Anthony Patterson. I will put Anthony Patterson in keep. Now, recently he has been linked with a move away. I think a couple of teams, or I think Sheffield United were one of them. We've been rumoured for an 8 million price tag, which for me, I'd probably take about 10 million for Patterson, if I'm totally honest. I feel like he's kind of in the middle. I feel like some people do overrate him, but then I feel like some people are too harsh on him. But I think he's in between. I don't think he's appalling, but I also don't think he's anywhere near as great as some people make out. Decent shot stopper. Communication in the box, I think, is pretty poor. I think his position at times is pretty poor. But again, it's one of them where he can pull out, wonder saves out of nowhere. He can make himself big and all that kind of stuff. But he's often so guilty of parrying a relatively simple shot back into the danger zone, and that's just something that has been one of Patterson's downfalls for a long time. However, he's young, he can only improve, so of course I'd like to see him stay. But if we did end up getting 10 million for him, and then there's other keepers out there who've got more championship experience who are just as good, I wouldn't be opposed. So Patterson I put in keep. Of course I'd like to see him stay. He's a Sunderland lad. I think he's a decent keeper, but that is all I think he is as of right now. I think he's a decent goalkeeper. Again, you guys can leave your opinions in the comments down below. Next up, we have Nathan Bishop. I have nothing sort of bad or good really to say against the lad. He hasn't had any game time at all other than the last game of the season. He's just been a second string goalkeeper. I'd probably say keep, just because he seems happy to be second string at Sunderland. And I think, of course, we only really have Patterson and Bishop. I would like to see personally a more experienced older goalkeeper in there to give Patterson some competition, because Bishop just isn't doing it. But if a keeper, and he doesn't seem awful, but he's a keeper who he used to play for Manchester United, he must have a little bit of talent in there, although we haven't seen much of him, just to keep him around the squad and keep a little bit of competition as a third or a second, probably a third string keeper for me, and then maybe bring someone else in, as I say, to give Patterson some proper competition. So I wouldn't be opposed to seeing Nathan Bishop staying at the club. Now, thirdly, we do have Huggins, a player who has been absolutely riddled with injuries. I do really feel for him because he was outstanding before he got injured. He was nearly one of our player of the seasons. He's had such bad luck when it comes to injuries, but when we have seen him play and he got a bit of game time, he was outstanding, be it left back, right back. He can do a job. He was only improving, when we first seen him, young lad. Going forward, I never questioned his ability, but defensive-wise, on the, be it as a wing back or just as a full back in general, he was getting caught out quite a lot when we did see him play. But when we did give him that run of games towards the beginning of the season, he was getting better and better. His positional awareness was getting a lot better, and his all-round play was getting a lot better. But now he's got a massive injury, a big hurdle to get over, and hopefully he does come back flying. But I am going to put him in keep because I do think he has something to offer. Exactly the same with the lad here, Dennis Serkin. He plays left back as well. He's one of them where marauding going forward, you can't really deny his ability. He's fantastic. But it's another injury-prone player, and it is difficult for me because I feel I've got a soft spot for the pair of them. But when you look at their injury record, they're horrendous. They're made of Weetabix, the pair of them. However, they do have quality. So it's one of them. We might get 10 games of Dennis Serkin in the season. We might get 10 games of Huggins, and they are very, very good players. But we can't predict the future. They could easily just get over their injuries, and the pair of them battle it out at left back or whatever position they might be preferred to play. Right back. Huggins is naturally a right back, but we were playing at left back at times. When they are fit, they're brilliant. So we never know. Next season, they might get 40 games under the belt. And if someone's told me that I'm going to get 40 games out of Huggins or 40 games out of Serkin, I'd snap your hand off for it because I think they're one of the better ones in the league. So for me, I'd absolutely keep Dennis Serkin. Very, very good player. But we'd have to see. If he has another injury-prone season, then as much as I love the lads, a pair of them, Huggins and Serkin, same boat, I think it's just time to, just cut ties because we can't keep someone in the books that long. Dan Ballard is the next one for me, and he's the first one to go in at keep at all costs. As I keep on repeating myself, Dan Ballard is someone who will be a Premier League defender in the next couple of years, I do believe. I think he's that good. He's only improving as well. He speaks for himself. He's a big brick shithouse. He's got that. He's got the vocal cords as well at the back. He has that leadership ability. And he's just a top-class player. He puts himself on the line. Some of his challenges, timing, fantastic. Just an all-round brilliant centre-back to have in this league, in this division. Next up is Timothy Pembele. So Pembele, again, frustrating one. He was injured for the first half of the season, and then we only seen him come on here and there. And he didn't look half bad. He didn't look terrible. He didn't do anything. So now I think it's a time for him to really give Trey Hume some real competition. So I'd say keep, because I didn't think he was that bad when we did see him. Next up, we have Luke O'Nien. Now, Luke O'Nien, I feel like is... And I keep on saying this, and people think I'm a bit biased towards Luke O'Nien, but I'm in the middle, because I'm aware of his erratic behaviours. Sometimes it can be really stupid and a little bit of a liability at times, but equally those same people that do give him grief for, maybe a stupid challenge or, a handball at a last-ditch attempt to try and get the ball away, and he'll take one for the team in that sense. Those same people, he just won't give him any credit when he is putting 8, 9 out of 10 performances, which he does do a lot, and a lot of people do. Just don't give him the credit I think he does deserve, because I think half the time, or even probably 70-80% of the time, he gives you very, very good games. His positional awareness has grew from a lad who was a central midfielder. He has been outstanding, and he's been, half the time, he's just as good as Dan Ballard, but because it isn't fashionable, no one says anything. It is improvement in his passing ability has been outstanding. And for Luke O'Nien, I'm going to put a keep. I do think he's a very, very... I won't put keep at all costs, because I do think Dan Ballard is all round going to give us a better payback if we do keep him. But Luke O'Nien, I think, is outstanding, and I won't be jumping on the hate train of Luke O'Nien anytime soon. But again, I can understand other people's complaints when they do complain about him. Next up, we have Jensen Seelt, who I thought he was okay. I think he was shoehorned in at right back a bit unfairly, when you can see he's definitely more of a centre-back. But for me, for Seelt, I think, he had a big injury again. I think we should put him on loan. Maybe just have a season somewhere, even in League One, to get him up to scratch with English football, and maybe have a really solid season there. See what happens. I think there's a player in there, but I don't think he's ready maybe for a team that... We say we want to challenge for the playoffs, but if we are going to challenge for the playoffs, I don't think Seelt is it. Next one, I'm also going to put Trey Hume in, keep at all costs. Now, I know a lot of people, they go against Trey Hume. Some people love him, some people not hate him. But I know this season hasn't been his best season in the world. But I just think Trey Hume has such an importance in this squad. His timing of challenges, which I know I've already mentioned a couple of times in this video, but his timing of challenges is one of the best I've genuinely seen in a Sunderland shirt. Some of his sliding challenges, which is probably a bit of a dying breed, are absolutely outstanding. Yes, his positional awareness at times has been caught out, but... more often than not, Trey Hume will save you than cost you. So I think Trey Hume is just one of them that I think he's a future Sunderland player. He's someone who I want to see for Sunderland and playing a Sunderland shirt for a long time, Trey Hume. So I've put him in there. Now, Leo Hjelde, it's one that I don't think we will sell him, and I do think we are probably guilty, not us of course because we don't decide, But Leo Hjelde is a player who I think he is a centre-back being shoehorned into a left-back position at a difficult period during Sunderland's history. So it is very, very difficult. And no one was getting in that partnership between Dan Ballard and Luke O'Nien at centre-back. No one was getting in there. So I do feel sorry for him. However, from what I have seen, I don't think it is good enough. And I don't think he is good enough. So I need to be brutal in that sense. Again, I don't think he's going to go. They might send him out on loan. But from what I'd seen off the first couple of games, I thought he was very comfortable at left back. And I was quite surprised. He wasn't like, tearing the place apart and looking incredible. But he did impress me in the sense that he looked assured. He wasn't doing absolutely incredibly. But he wasn't as poor as people were trying to lead on. But then I just don't think, if we're going to be honest, he is good enough. So I would put sell for Leo Hjelde. I don't think he's good enough. Alessi, another one. Yeah, there's 3 players already who are just stupidly injury prone, but when they are fit, we know how good they can be. Alessi, I would put in keep, because when he is fit, I think he's a very good player. He can play at left back or in the centre. I do prefer seeing Alessi in the left-hand side of a back 3 or a trio, but if he really wants that centre-back position, which is a natural position, he really needs to push this season to try and get in that, try and break up that partnership between Dan Ballard and Luke O'Nien, which is very difficult at the moment. But I would like to see that at least trialled with. Maybe in pre-season, maybe try Ballard and Alessi, or maybe O'Nien and Alessi, vice versa. But I do really, really like him. I think there's a player in there. I've recently tied him down to a long-term deal. So I would like to see more of him. Again, another very injury-prone player. And I think if we do have a season again where he's just injured for the majority of it, he needs to go. We need to be brutal despite how much we know he can grow in terms of potential and how good he is now. We can't have people on the injury list just taking up wages. Next up is Corey Evans. I think we've already covered a video recently. I think we aren't going to be offering him a new deal, so I'm going to put sell. It's a shame. We definitely need to replace in terms of experience and leadership in the middle of the park. But sadly, he's been injured for far too long, and I think it'll take too long to get him back to where we need him to be. To really just to make it our work, to make it worth it for us. Next up, we do have Jobe Bellingham. I would put in keep. It has been very frustrating because if you ever look at his stats, they're not actually terrible for a first season, given he's only 18 years of age. Still an incredibly young lad, but unfortunately, for some reason, we just leaned on him far too heavily this season. We really did, and that's why we got the injuries. That's why we got the out of form. What we get 1 or 2 really good games from him. And then we'd get 9 or 10 where he was anonymous. It'd be too slow. We're not playing in his best positions. He doesn't know himself what his best position is at this age. You should be really knowing where you can and can't play. But again, it's one of them. You'd have one game where it'd be absolutely phenomenal. And then it'd be too many games where you wouldn't know he was on the pitch. But he's young. There is a player in there. I'm willing to stand by him. Absolutely. Next up, we have Elliot Embleton. Again, if you've watched me over the years, I do like Elliot Embleton. I believe he does have value to a team because he can play left, right-footed, he's creative, he's direct with his running, and I really, really like that. And I think he may be able to do something for us, but he is, unfortunately, and it's such a shame, because I think he's a good lad. Obviously, he's a Sunderland fan, Sunderland born and bred, and he's just, unfortunately, so injury-prone that I just don't... He's one of them where I think the time's passed where he's not just like he's just had 1 or 2 injuries. He picks up a big injury almost every single season, and he went out on loan. It didn't work out because of his injury as well. I think it would be time to cut ties with Elliot Embleton, unfortunately. And I do really, really like him. But I think he's one that has to go, sadly. Next up, again, it's a really difficult one, Paddy Roberts. Paddy Roberts, in the season where we did get to the playoff semi-final, first time of asking in the Championship, he had a fantastic season. If you ever look at his stats in that season, they actually weren't that impressive. But we just know how well he linked up with, stats aren't the be-all and end-all, but the link-up play and how clever he was and how dangerous he was, with that link-up play with Diallo and Trey Hume on that right-hand side. They were taking the piss out of teams at times, and he was an integral part to that. But now we've pulled away Diallo, and Trey Hume isn't the same as what he was, maybe, because maybe they needed a quality player like Diallo to link that triangle up. He's been poor, and he has had an awful season, an absolutely terrible season. However, he just got a long-term deal, and it's one of them. He had a good season followed by a really, really poor season. Didn't contribute in any way, shape or form in stats. But we all know how good he can be. For me, Patrick Roberts, this next coming season, it is a sort of make or break because he's gone from that good to that poor. So I think it's give him a chance this season. If it don't work out, then there we go. Maybe make a little bit of money on him or cut ties and that's it. For me, I'd like to see Paddy Roberts stay. We need to get his confidence up and that is it. Next up, we have Romain Mundle. We'd only seen a handful of occasions. I think he looked bright, he looked aggressive, which is what I like. But ultimately, I don't think he did look good enough at this time. There's definitely a massive potential in there. I think there is. But again, a lot of these players have been mismanaged for me. Mundle being that. He didn't know whether he was coming or going. He wouldn't get a game for 4 or 5 games and we might see him for 10 minutes or 1. And when we did see him, when he first come onto the scene, he looked bright. Again, he looked quick, direct. And then as soon as anyone looks like they get any kind of form, they get pulled out the side. And it just shows how mismanaged again. But for me, again, if we're being brutal, I think we need a team that needs to head for or trying to attempt to get into the top 6. Can Mundle be a part of that realistically? I'm not too sure, but I would put him out on loan for me. It'd be nice to see him get a run in. But again, this season, we need players to come in who are ready-made to go for it. And I just don't think the likes of Mundle are ready for that so far. So anyway, next up, Abdullah Bar. He's someone who is very, very inconsistent for me. He can come on against a team who are maybe already sort of dead and buried and he'll destroy them, or a team that will back off and they're not in our faces, not pressing enough, and he will rip them a new one. But then he's very easily figured out, Abdullah Bar. He's a one-trick pony, and then he will get 10 games where he plays. He is so predictable, slows the play down, he loses the ball constantly. For me, it is annoying. It's one of them where I think there is a player in there, but ultimately, is he good enough? I don't think Abdullah Bar is. So I'm going to put in Sell. Again, it does kill me because I do actually like the lad. And I do think there is an ability in there. But he's far too inconsistent. And I might be contradicting myself with other players that I'm saying to keep. There's a lot of injury-prone players that I'm saying to keep there, but give him another chance. But I think we've seen enough of Abdullah Bar to judge whether he's good enough. And I think over the course of the season, he isn't good enough for this league. Now, next up, we do have Ellis Taylor. And it's a difficult one because I feel like we've had Ellis Taylor at this, in the squad for many, many years now, longer than he actually has been. And I know that he's been integral to the youth setup. He's been the captain of the side. We've seen him in bit pieces come on in sort of like the Checker Trade Trophy and stuff like that, and in lesser competitions when we're in League One. And he just didn't look good enough. However, he's integral to the youth setup. But how long can you be, at his age? How old, how long can he go on to just be the captain of your youth side? I think even just for him, I think it is time for him to go because he's not going to be good enough for our team this season. He's been great for the youth side, and I know it sounds harsh, but again, if we're going to be brutal, and our youth setup looks fantastic at the moment, that's one thing I will give to the hierarchy. Our youth setup looks absolutely fantastic, but I'm going to say sell. I don't think it's a bit harsh for get rid. For Ellis Taylor, I think it's time to cut ties with him. Next up, it's the most obvious one of all, Jack Clarke. If we can, keep at all costs. He's someone who will, particularly if we build a team around him with better players, ready-made players for the championship, he will shine. And the thing is, when we have Jack Clarke on the pitch, if he has a bad game, the entire team has a bad game. If we have other players that are just as good, or nearly as good, and we can lean on when Jack Clarke maybe isn't right at it, because the thing is, if Jack Clarke gives a 6, 7 out of 10 game, he can still offer you something, but no one else is offering anything, so it's all heavily reliant on him. So if there's other players who can step up, then it just makes it so much more worth it. And Jack Clarke is a phenomenal player who absolutely will get a move to the Premier League, and I think it will happen this season. However, if we did have the opportunity, keep him at all costs. Next up, Al Sheesh. Again, another very frustrating one, because he hasn't been given a run in the team properly, only towards the back end of the season when the team were already down and out. But every now and then he'll just show you this glimpse of quality, and there's absolutely a player in there. And he does look great, he's aggressive, but then we won't see him for a bit. And then we'll reward him for a bit part performance. He'll have a cameo performance where he looks fantastic, then we'll reward him with a start, and he'll be poor. So it's one of them, will he be good enough? But I do think there is a player in there. So around him with the right players, again, I know I'm probably contradicting myself, but I'd say keep for Al Sheesh. I think there's a player in there. I wouldn't be totally opposed to him if he was to go, but I just think there's something there. There's something there in Al Sheesh that I would like to see him stay. Next up, another easy one for me. Keep at all costs. Rolls Royce in the middle. Dan Neil. He played almost every game this season, and I think he is a fantastic player. But he needs to be played with someone else to give him that freedom. Because I feel like a lot of our centre mids this season, and I'll probably say the same thing with Ekwa and Dan Neil as well, the shackles have been put on them because we just haven't had the right partnership in midfield with Dan Neil, Ekwa. For me, it doesn't work. Dan Neil, yes, he can do the box-to-box, the dirty work, but he's actually so good. If if the leash is taken off him, he can make things happen going forward, but he's been held back so much because Ekwa, again, people like to put him in a holding role. He isn't a holding player. He likes to get forward as well. But both of them, it's like they just don't know what they're doing because both of them like to go forward, but they're just holding each other back because they're not those kind of players. So Dan Neil with the right partner will be outstanding. And he's already had a good season. I don't think it's been as amazing a season as some people have made out, but we know what he can bring to the table. Dan Neil is a phenomenal player, and I think he will just flourish if he's given the correct partner. Next up, we have Callum Styles. Styles, of course, came out on loan. Again, probably a bit harsh that he's been shoehorned into different positions and coming to a really difficult time at Sunderland. Towards the back end of the season, there were a couple of times I thought he's a tidy player on the ball, but then just equally as many poor positions. You know, when we put him at left wing back, which people said that's where he played mainly for Barnsley, he looked terrible. He looked absolutely terrible. But then when he was pushed inwards a bit more, he didn't look that bad. He looked okay. Is it good enough to go for promotion or for playoffs at least? I don't think so. So I'm going to put Sell, which I know he's not our player, but I wouldn't want him back on loan. I think we just don't do that. Next up, we have Chris Rigg. Easy for me. Keep at all costs. Don't get me wrong, he hasn't had an outstanding season. He's been shoehorned again, another player put out of position. Right wing, for me, I've said so many times, I'm only repeating myself. He's a centre mid, or he can play as a 10, but for me, I've seen him many times play centre mid. He dominates. He's a young player with so much potential, and only over the last day or two, he has been linked with Manchester United, and even his dad on Instagram has been sharing articles with Chris Rigg being linked with Manchester United, which is so unprofessional for me. Pissed me off a little bit, but there we go. Maybe he's just proud that his son's getting linked with a massive team. I get it, but I feel like it's a little bit disrespectful to do that. But either way, Chris Rigg, massive potential. We know what he's all about. Hopefully he signs a long-term deal with Sunderland. I think for his, and not just for me being selfish, for his, for him to progress and for him to grow, I think he should stay at Sunderland because I think it's a great platform for him. And other players, a lot of other players, I think people do underestimate how good of a platform it is to stay at Sunderland and to grow. And he will. I just hope he gets given a good run, even in a centre or as a number 10, something like that. A more preferred position because he's not a winger. And we'll see how good Chris Rigg is next season. Next up, Ekwa. Again, a lot of people have said that they want to see him go. Again, he's one of those where I think there is a player in there, but I don't think he should be starting for me. I don't think he should be starting. I think there is a player in there. I think we may have been guilty of overusing him a bit. Because every now and then he will give you a game and you think, Jesus Christ, what a player. And he'll stick out like a sore thumb. Followed by 10, 15 games, which again is a lot of games, or maybe 10 games, I'm maybe exaggerating a little bit there, where his awareness on the ball is poor, his tempo to the game is poor, and he'll hold the ball. It just doesn't have that tempo to move the ball when we're trying to break forward. He'll stop the ball, and he's so slow to react to when we're trying to get on the break, slow us down. He'll have 3 or 4 players around him, and he's too sort of nonchalant and casual on the ball, and they get the ball nicked off him. And we've seen it in vital games this season, and he has cost us. But again, there's a player in there. As a squad player, I don't think it is bad to keep someone like Pierre Ekwa. Again, very, very young player. 90% of the squad are very young, and they will have a bit of potential, and I think Ekwa can grow. Next up, Bradley Dark, and he's going to be the first one to put in get rid, because I know he looks like we're not offering him a new contract anyway, but he's just been a waste of time for me, an absolute waste of time. Injured, and he looked poor when we have seen him. I can understand the theory and the way why we went for him, but he's been poor. He's been injured, and when we have seen him, he's done nothing. He's looked overweight, and just a waste of time, waste of money for me. Next up, Hamir. It's a frustrating one because I've tried to big Hamir up so many times this season and hope that we give him something, because in pre-season he looked brilliant in terms of a target man holding the play up. He wasn't scared to go from goal from any angle, from any range. He wasn't scared. He looked really confident, and he was scoring goals. And granted, the calibre of teams and players and sides we're going up against in pre-season weren't phenomenal, but he was scoring goals and he was confident. And then we had a handful of games where he wasn't quite at it in the Championship. And then we introduced Burstow, who was shite, and we were just forcing Burstow up top. It was awful. Then by the time Hamir did come in, his confidence was absolutely shot, and he'd get given 10 minutes, 2 minutes here and there. And of course, you can't really do too much for a young lad. Again, he's only 18, 19 as well. You need to remember. But I think give him a loan somewhere. People are going to hate me for this, but give Hamir a loan somewhere, maybe in League One, and hopefully he gets games there. And I think we might see a Hamir that I just, for some reason, believe there is a good player in there. I could be wrong, but either way. Burstow, another one who was on loan. He goes in to get rid as well, because I just think he was so bad. Apparently, according to like Mowbray, Beal and others on the training pitch, he's is hitting the back of the net constantly in training. However, he just didn't do it in a Sunderland shirt, did he? And he just looked so poor and nowhere near at it. And it just isn't good enough, nowhere near good enough. So I don't want to see him in a Sunderland shirt ever again. Probably a lovely lad, but it just didn't work out for him. Next up, we do have Nazri Rusyn. For me, sell. Again, it's a shame. And I think for some of these players, I think we're probably just holding on to dear lad because he seems like a nice lad. You know, we came in, and when we have seen him, yes, he has been direct. We might see a totally different Rusyn next season, but he's reportedly very unsettled. He still doesn't speak the language. Of course, coming from Ukraine, a youngish lad himself. It's a difficult task anyway. They just had a bit part role here and there. And then as soon as he did look half decent, he got his first goal. We just dropped him out the side for no reason. We started going with Burstow again. So he's been mismanaged, but for me, let's be brutally honest, I just don't think he's good enough, or he's going to be good enough, and we need to buy at least a couple of strikers this season that are ready-made and ready to go in the Championship. So that's what I would do. I don't think Rusyn is good enough. Lastly, again, this is a difficult one, because my ender, when we started using him and brought him on, in a handful of games, bit pots, 10 minutes here and there, and he looked like a real handful. Strong, direct, running at players. And then we thought, okay, we'll send him out on loan, see what happens, and he couldn't get into the Hibernian side. And that can't be for no reason. So I'm going to put Mayenda in to sell. I don't think he's good enough. But sadly, if he can't get into the Hibernian side, he can't be good enough. And now that's just made me realise that Triantis isn't on the list either. I'm probably missing players for the fun of it here, aren't I? But Triantis, next to Triantis for me, maybe another loan spell, because I believe Triantis, he originally, when they started him at centre-back, he was poor, and that was even in Scotland. But then they actually put him in centre-mid, and he was very, very good. Again, the calibre is completely different to what we'd be up against in comparison to Scotland, with no disrespect. But maybe there's a player in there. And when he did play for us, it didn't look awful, so maybe another loan spell. But it just shows there's a very thin squad there. I'm probably missing out players, probably big players that I'm missing here. You guys will probably have to tell me in the comments, but that is probably my thought process. And it looks like we're keeping or getting rid of quite a lot there. But I think we just need a lot of improvement. We need a lot of good, ready-made to go players. When I say ready-made to go, I don't mean they need to have a ton of experience in the Championship in terms of like 4 and 5, or at least be like really old. Just players who are ready in terms of quality and maybe have had 200 games under the belt, at least plenty of games under the belt. Not someone who's 18 years of age who playing the second string squad in Spain or something, and they might have a better potential in a few years down the line. We need a good 7 or 8 players who are ready to go, particularly a couple of strikers, wingers as well, to help out and give competition to certain players. But this is probably what I would go with. Again, I've probably missed out players. But let me know in the comments down below. I'm looking at this now and it looks a bit messy, to be honest with you. But let me know how you feel in the comments down below. But if you have enjoyed, hit the like button for me. It'd be massively, massively appreciated. And subscribe to the channel if you're not already to become a fully fledged member of the Sarny Army. But for now, take care and stay jammy.